What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. Got a nice little couple of duels for you guys to check out. And this is actually a very interesting concept combining two archetypes that I'm not sure anybody has thought to really put together in one deck, and that is Element Sabers and Invoked. I play a good amount of Element Sabers on my live stream, and one of the problems that I have had with the deck a lot of times is, man, if you don't open up with this freaking Temple, or if you don't open up with Terraforming, basically if you don't get to your field spell like turn one, this deck is incredibly mediocre. I'm talking like you don't even want to normal summon any of the monsters because they're just so underwhelming without the field spell. But if you have the field spell, it's like, man, he's basically playing like Super Saiyan God. And I think that maybe the invoked side of the deck can kind of alleviate that, because invoked is an engine where it's kind of just like one card, almost summon Alistair and then you instantly get invocation. And since your attributes are all over the place, you can kind of use that to, and at any given time go into like one of your big invoked monsters, while not having these monsters kind of be dead if you don't have the field spell. So these are just a couple of quick duels showing off some of the plays that this deck can do. His opponent is playing Shiranui, and I don't really know about this play. Well, first off, he's playing Zombino, so this is like borderline trolling. He activates Mask of Restrict because he was like, yo, Cap, I ain't losing to no true Dracos. 60 card Shiranui, by the way, too. But I'm not sure that he was ready for this quite yet. He's going to go for Willard with the search. He's going to dump 2. He goes into the Alistair Link, and then he's going to go ahead. He's going to fusion summon for the fire invoked, and then he's going to go ahead and he's going to get another copy of Invocation. And check this out. He's going to fusion summon again for Raijin, but he is not done yet. My man is going to put that monster face down, and then he's going to fusion summon for a third time for the copy of Merkaba. And keep in mind, this card is currently 4,700 with piercing damage. I believe that that is almost certainly an LTK. Yeah, his opponent has no chance of surviving that. That's pretty damn powerful. Now, the thing is, if he didn't actually kill him here, what you'll notice about Element Sabers is you wouldn't get a battle phase next turn. So you basically, like, when you're going for it, you definitely got to go for it, because that field spell, the second that you actually search, like, you don't have any more, like, you won't have a battle phase that next turn. I gotta feel like that if that guy maybe had Imperial Order or Anti-Spell Fragrance, I think maybe he could have lived for a turn. Like, the duel could have went drastically, like, it could have went differently. This is him going first with the same deck. You see him search for Willard and then go for, well, he searched Alistair with Magical Meltdown first. A lot of field spells. Gonna go with Pot of Desires. Gets another copy of the Elemental Temple. And this one's going to be a little different. He's instead going to go for 2 copies of Invoked Merkaba. I do like the, I understand what he's doing. Basically, he's going into the Alistair Link monster so that he can basically drop multiple of the fusion monsters. Although, like, Willard is such a powerful card. If you can, get the battle protection and then also get, like, the targeting protection, or I guess you could go for like the card destruction effect as well, where you're protected from that. His opponent is playing he's playing a relinquished deck, and he is trying to fight back. It's such a shame that he he opened up with rank up the 7th one. I love that card, but sometimes that is the problem with it. Thousand Eyes Restrict is going to get banished when he discards the Alistair. He's going to lose out his pre-preparation. He's going to lose his pre-preparation of rights with the other copy of Merkaba. Now the thing is, I don't agree with this. Yeah, I feel like this guy really scooped prematurely, because even though, yeah, his opponent has tons of battle damage on the field, and it looks like, oh, come on, Cap, he's just going to kill him next turn, he doesn't get a battle phase next turn because he did search Willard from the Temple of the Elemental Lord, so he's not in any mortal danger. His opponent can have 10 billion, damage on board, but he doesn't get a battle phase, so what does it matter? And he had a Magical Meltdown coming, which could get him another copy of Alistair, but what's really the point of even playing it when you're not going to get any damage? I think it's really interesting to see how the duel would have played out if this guy didn't scoop, because he had a Kinkaboyo coming, and technically with the Kinkaboyo plus the Relinquish, he could have activated Relinquish Fusion. He could have then went into Millennium Eyes Restrict, and if he would have let the Relinquish Fusion go, he could have banished Relinquish Fusion from the graveyard. He could have sucked up one of the copies of Merkaba, and he could have, maybe went to work and started, coming back into the game or whatever, but I guess we'll never know. I mean, maybe he holds on to the Magical Meltdown, he negates the Relinquish Fusion, and then the duel is just absolutely over. Although, no, searching from Preparation of Rites, he still wouldn't have had Dark Illusion Ritual, so I guess it wouldn't have mattered. Anyways, I guess that's all water under bridge because it didn't happen. But it does showcase one of the problems with just Element Sabers in general. The fact is, like, you have to have the field spell to win, but then at the same time, the field spell, like, it basically puts you in this vicious cycle where you're like constantly searching, but then you're never actually able to do battle damage after the first time that you search because you're searching. So like sometimes Element Sabers have like a serious problem closing out the duel. So let me go ahead and pause and show you guys the deck list really quickly. So this is what the deck looks like on paper, and it's actually somewhat what I was expecting. I do think there are some things in here that don't quite fit. As you can see, this deck is super field spell reliant. I almost want to say super duper because you got 6 field spells that, you know, have Rhodas in them, and then obviously you got the Terraforming, the Rhoda for the field spells. There are some cards that have been cut. You don't see any Elemental Lords in here. I think that makes sense because there's no point of the Elemental Lords. You generally need a bunch of monsters in your graveyard, at least 5 of your little Element Sabers, and you're not really going to meet that condition if you're like constantly banishing them with invocation. So I don't think the Elemental Lords make any sense in this deck. Also, there is not the water one. I don't know what her name is, but I know that she's a warrior returning alive. I don't even really summon her that much when I play Element Sabers. Now, one card that I did look at, and I think it looks good on paper, but I actually don't think it's very good at all in this deck, is actually Scapegoat, right? So you look at Scapegoat and you're like, oh, Cap G, Scapegoat is so good in Invoked. Why doesn't it make sense here? And yes, it is very good in Invoked. The problem with Scapegoat here is Scapegoat is a card that cannot be used in your first turn. Like, you just can't use Scapegoat going first. Well, I mean, I guess you could activate it, but then you can't do any link plays with it. So Scapegoat is a card that has to be used during your second turn, and the problem with that is if you're going to go for Temple of the Elemental Lords, the field spell you generally want to always hit first turn when playing Element Sabers, you aren't going to be able to really use Scapegoat to its fullest potential, right? Because during that second turn, you know, when you actually resolve the Scapegoat, you're not going to have a battle phase if you search with this card. So what's the point of making this big-ass Borreload Dragon if it can't attack and it can't steal monsters? And I don't know, I just look at Scapegoat and I'm just like, that doesn't really work all that well when you combine it with this card. Hell, I can only think of a couple of times, like maybe once or twice when I actually used Scapegoat effectively while playing Element Sabers. Then I was just like, you know what, this doesn't work in this deck. Scapegoat's good, but it doesn't work in everything specifically because of this field spell. The rest of the deck is, I think, fairly standard. I don't really think you actually need any traps playing Element Sabers. I run a couple in mine, but mine is like a pure build. In this version, I think that your monsters are basically just your stun, like Merkaba, and then I don't know. I honestly don't know any of the names of these Element Sabers, but this one, the light one, basically can negate spells and traps while it's on the field, and if you summon it while you have Willard on the field, then its 400 attack is irrelevant because usually Willard will have battle protection for all your Element Sabers. But you saw in his build, Willard, or in his duels, Willard was mainly used to go into the Alistair Link monster, so it's a little different, but I think the concept is somewhat the same. I think this is mainly just used as like Merkaba fodder to just be sent to the graveyard to, like, yeah, summon multiple copies of Merkaba and whatnot.